I'm Ellen from EVPL Oakland Library. Welcome to Chapter Book Storytime, the first Chapter Book Storytime of 2025. So, Happy New Year! I hope it's going well for you so far. Now, if you've resolved to read more in 2025, have I got the book to start you out. It's by a famous author, and it's got a title that might be sort of familiar to you. The Frindle Files by Andrew Clements. Have you heard of a Frindle before? Well, you probably had, because Frindle is the title of Andrew Clements, one of his first novels. It was written in 1996, and it won all kinds of awards, and kids love it. They always ask for this book when they come into the library. So if you've read Frindle, now we have the Frindle Files, which was published in 2024. And unfortunately, I have to tell you that this is Andrew Clements' last novel because he passed away in 2019. Oh, so it's kind of neat that we come around full circle. He started out with Frindle, and now we're ending with the Frindle Files. So it's a great book. I have a confession to make. I've never read Frindle. I know the kids love it, and it's very popular, but I had never read it until I read the Frindle Files. And I thought, I need to know more background information. I need to know more about it. Now, if you just read the Frindle Files, they will catch you up and tell you what happened in Frindle. But if you want to get the whole story and all of the emotion and all of the fun that goes with it, then you would want to start out with Frindle. Frindle is the story of a boy named Nick Allen. He's not so much a troublemaker as a boy who has a lot of ideas, and he knows how to use them, and he knows how to get other people involved in his ideas. When he gets to 5th grade, he meets his match, Mrs. Granger. She's been teaching for a long time, very serious, and the English language is very important, and the dictionary is the most important tool a student can use. Nick has a question for her, though. Who says what words go into the dictionary? Who says that a dog is called a dog, for example? Well, she says anybody can. We agree, we all as a people in our communications, we determine what a word will mean. And so Nick thinks about that, and he comes up with the word Frindle, which is a writing utensil filled with ink. And he persuades all of his friends and all of his classmates and everyone in the whole school to start using the word Frindle instead of pen. And the battle starts between Mrs. Granger and Nick Allen. And the word Frindle spreads, not just from their school, but across the state, across the country, and Nick Allen becomes very, very famous. And I won't tell you who won the war, but it's a lot of fun to read, and it has a really, really heartwarming ending. It's a really, really good book. So now you know a little bit about Frindle. Let's move on to the Frindle Files. Did you notice a difference in the covers? They're very similar. Some things are the same, but some have changed. Let's see. In Frindle, we have, looks like students, and we have an apple, and we have books, and we have the Frindle. Let's see what's on this cover. We have a young student. This is Josh, and he has a Frindle. There are some books, but now we've moved into the 21st century, and Josh has a computer. Josh is a techie. He loves computers. He loves programming. He belongs to computer clubs after school. He just thinks computers are the best thing ever. And so, with that, I'll start reading the Frindle Files. Chapter 1, Results. The only thing Josh Willet liked about homework was how quickly he could access his assignments. All he had to do was to turn on his laptop, then click the 6th grade homework portal he'd bookmarked on his browser at the start of the school year. This system let Josh zoom through his homework so that he could get back to the things he cared about the most, like a new coding problem, or a new digital animation project, or a new action sequence for the online game he wanted to build. Because Josh always had something new to work on, a plan he was hatching. and usually it involved his computer. On this Monday evening in mid-September, without taking his fingers off the keyboard or his eyes off the screen, Josh sat at the kitchen table and crushed his homework for math, science, and social studies in less than 20 minutes, including the time it took to post each finished assignment. And then he clicked on the link for his ELA class, English Language Arts. The image of a handwritten note popped out open on his screen. Homework due Tuesday. Describe something you think is beautiful. Make your description at least 100 words long. Avoid cliches and remember this advice from page 70 of The Elements of Style. Write in a way that comes naturally. Copy your final draft onto lined paper in blue or black ink and turn in the assignment. It is due Tuesday at the beginning of class. As always, neatness counts. Mr. N. The assignment itself, plus the way it had been written by hand, plus the whole neatness counts thing, all of it made Josh scowl and grit his teeth. A chore like this should only take about 10 minutes. Type it, format it, spell check it, post it, and whoosh, done. But having to write out every language arts assignment in ink, on paper, it was annoying, slow, and totally pointless. Not to mention bad for the environment. Didn't Mr. N understand anything? It wasn't that Mr. N was mean or unfair. He just seemed so backward and also dull, except for the way he dressed. He owned at least 10 Hawaiian shirts, and he wore one each day, along with surfer shorts, hiking socks, and sandals. He would wear cargo pants, but only if the outdoor temperature got below 65 degrees. His dark red hair never looked completely tamed, especially when he rode his bike to school. Some days it seemed like he was trying to grow a mustache, or a beard, or both. Plenty of people in Southern California wore casual clothes, but at Clara Vista Middle School, Mr. N could win a prize for the least dressed up teacher every single day. The most backward thing about Mr. N, he was the only teacher in the whole school who didn't let kids use laptops in class. He claimed there was no rule saying he had to allow them. Josh had checked the school handbook after getting his first assignment just to make sure. There was a rumor that once he'd had a big argument with Mr. Ortega about posting his homework assignments on the school website. Mr. N had told the principal that writing the assignments on the board in his classroom was enough. And he didn't mean one of the smartboards that every other teacher used. No, Mr. N had an actual chalkboard that he could move around the room on wheels. The whiteboard was there, but Mr. N kept it hidden behind a huge poster about the parts of speech. And that miserable little grammar book, The Elements of Style, most of it was over 100 years old. Almost every day, Mr. N made the entire class open to a certain page, and then some poor kid would have to stand up and read something out loud. If you forgot to bring your copy to class, you'd get a red mark in the grade book, and 3 marks made your whole grade drop 5 points. Antique books, ancient chalkboards, handwriting on paper, Mr. N's class felt like being stuck inside a broken time machine. More like a time-wasting machine. It was so frustrating to Josh, who just wanted Mr. N to appreciate the world his students were actually living in. But grumbling was also a waste of time, so Josh opened a new document on his laptop. He had to write out the final copy by hand, but he always typed his first draft. Like a normal human being living in the 21st century. Something beautiful. Josh stared at the empty document on his screen, watching the cursor as it blinked and blinked. He had no idea, not even a bad one. But as he looked at that blinking cursor, he decided it must be appearing once each second. A half second on and a half second off. He opened the stopwatch app on his iPhone and ran a quick test. Yep, 1 blink per second. And Josh understood why. The cursor blinked once on each second because somewhere inside his laptop there was a line or two of computer code. A programmer had written that code, which told the computer what to do. And the computer obeyed. It had no choice, because good code is like a set of unbreakable rules. And if the programmer gets everything right, that code keeps working, and working perfectly, practically forever. And And that's what I'm going to write about. A few hours earlier, during his after-school coding club, Josh had finished writing a perfect loop statement, a sequence of instructions that repeated itself until a specific goal was met. And that loop was beautiful. A flurry of words rushed into his mind, and Josh's fingers zipped around the keyboard. 6 or 7 minutes later, the counter at the bottom of his document showed he had typed 136 words. Just like that. After some quick proofreading, he began writing his final copy on a sheet of paper. Neatly. Josh knew he had scrunchy handwriting, but his spelling was perfect, and his sentences made sense. The page looked clean and organized, and word after word flowed onto the paper in bright blue ink. With only 4 sentences left to copy, disaster struck. The pen skipped, and the dry point almost tore his paper. It was out of ink. Josh shook his pen and tried again. Nothing. He banged it on the edge of the kitchen table, but that didn't help either. So he dug around in his backpack and found 2 other pens. He tested one on a scrap of paper. Black ink. He tried the second. More black ink. And he needed blue ink to match what he'd started with for Mr. N, the neatness nut. Well, I guess I could start over and use black ink. Josh shouted, "Hey, Mom! I'm right here, and quiet down. Dad's putting Sophie to bed." Josh hurried through the doorway into the family room. "I need a pen with blue ink so I can finish Mr. N's homework." Check the middle drawer of my desk. Josh opened the drawer, and the first pen he tried, blue ink. "Got one, thanks." Back at the kitchen table, Josh was about to start writing again. Then he noticed something printed on the side of the pen. One word in bold black letters. Frindle. It was a word he'd never seen before, which made him curious. And Josh did what any other plugged-in kid would do. He searched the word on his browser. Frindle. And then he hit return. Whoa! 270,000 results? After clicking a few links, Josh opened up the images that were part of the search results. A lot of images. The very first picture showed some kid on a TV talk show, smiling at the camera and holding up a pen. And in another image halfway down the screen, Josh saw a close-up of a pen that was exactly like his mom's. He dashed back into the family room. "Hey, Mom, where did you get this pen?" She looked, and then she smiled. I've had that since 6th grade. Everyone at my school started calling pens Frindles. And when those showed up in stores, I bought a couple. So did all my friends. It was kind of a big thing for a while. "Is it okay if I use this one to finish my homework?" "Sure, but then put it back, please. That might be a collector's item someday." Josh hurried back to the table to finish his homework, shaking the old pen as he went. 3 minutes later, he was done with his final draft, and even though the ink from his mom's pen wasn't a perfect match, it was definitely blue. He returned the pen to her desk and then went back to his computer. The picture results were still on his screen, and Josh clicked the photo of that kid holding up his pen on a talk show. The enlarged image gave him a good look at the boy. Red hair, glasses, freckles, and a wide smile. Josh read the words below the picture. Nicholas Allen, age 11, inventor of the word Frindle. "Cool," he whispered, impressed that a kid his age was an inventor. He looked at the boy's face and then leaned in closer to the screen, still looking. Josh whispered, "No way." He clicked back to his homework assignment page, then back to the school's homepage. He kept clicking links until there was a second photo open on his screen, and he put the 2 pictures side by side, the boy on the left and the new photo on the right. Then Josh almost stopped breathing. The kid on the left was 11, and the man on the right was at least 30. But Josh was sure he was looking at 2 photos of the same person. And the man on the right, it was his language arts teacher, Mr. N, also known as Mr. Allen Nicholas. Chapter 2, Binary Question. Josh loved writing programs for computers because computers demanded perfection. The answer to the question, does this program work, had to be either yes or no. It was never maybe. He also loved how computers made billions of exact calculations every second by using binary code. Binary code was so simple, nothing but ones and zeros. Those ones and zeros worked like tiny switches inside a computer, and those switches were either on or off, just like yes or no, never maybe. So when Josh had a problem to solve, he usually tried to turn it into a binary question, a simple question with only two possible answers like true or false, yes or no. And on Tuesday morning at school, Josh wanted to answer this binary question. Mr. N and Nick Allen, are they identical or different? The night before, Josh had started to doubt his discovery about Mr. N. Maybe it was all a coincidence. And to cure this uncertainty, Josh had done more research and kept careful records of what he found. After taking another long look at those two photos, the kid holding up his Frindle and Mr. N's photo from the school website, Josh had dragged a copy of each onto his desktop, along with one of the Frindle pen images. He discovered an old article about Nick Allen and the Frindle in the Westfield Gazette, the newspaper in the kid's hometown. Then an article about Nick's 5th grade English teacher, Mrs. Granger, and a third article about Bud Lawrence, the man who had started a company to sell those Frindle pens all over the country. With so many links to explore, after only half an hour, Josh had copied over 50 different photos, articles, and documents onto his desktop. The kids from Frindle are now adults, like Josh's mom. And Nick Allen, the ringleader, the inventor of the word Frindle, is he really Alan Nicholas, Josh's teacher? Well, like any techie, Josh turns to the internet and begins to research. But the trail goes cold after 2009 when Nicholas Allen graduates from college. And then there's nothing else about him. So, could his teacher really be the inventor of Frindle? Josh comes up with a plan, an experiment, to see if he really is the Frindle guy. And he's going to try it out the next day in school. After first period gym on Tuesday, Josh hurried and arrived early for language arts. He had that picture on his phone of Nick Allen holding up his Frindle on TV, and he wanted to compare it to the actual Mr. N. When he got to his seat in room 113, he sneaked a peek at his phone. Then Josh studied Mr. N sitting there at his desk making notes in his Elements of Style paperback. Mr. N had the same color hair and eyes as the boy, same shape, nose, and mouth, and they both wore round-rimmed glasses. And, of course, their names were remarkably similar. Actually, too similar. If a person named Nicholas Allen wanted to change his name, why would he just swap the parts around? That seemed almost stupid, and Josh knew Mr. N was intelligent. In spite of their similar appearances and names, Josh, the programmer, needed perfect binary clarity. Are they identical or different? So he waited for the right moment to put a plan in motion. At precisely 8:23, Josh walked to the bookcase in the front corner of the room. Mr. N was always going on about how reading good books makes you a better writer, and his shelves were overflowing. Josh pulled out a copy of 𝑇ℎ𝑒 𝐹𝑟𝑖𝑛𝑑𝑙𝑒 and stood there pretending to read the back cover. He felt like a detective on a stakeout. Exactly 1 minute later, Mr. N got up and went out to stand in the hallway next to his door, something he did right before each class. Josh waited another 39 seconds, then put the book back and walked toward his seat. But as he passed Mr. N's desk, he pulled something from his pocket and slipped it underneath Mr. N's Elements of Style book. Josh got to his chair just as the bell rang. He took out his homework assignment, the one written on lined paper in 2 different shades of blue ink. He also found his copy of the Elements of Style in case he needed to prove that he had brought it to class. He dug around in his backpack for a fresh pencil and a piece of paper so he'd be all set to take notes. And then Josh wished he'd had 100 other little tasks so he could keep busy for the next 53 minutes. That way, he might look like a regular kid during a regular ELA class, a kid who wasn't nervous or worried or half out of his skull with excitement, because Josh had just set a trap. Using a fine tip Sharpie, he had written the word Frindle in bold black letters along the barrel of a plain white plastic pen. And now the word on that pen was right there on that desk, waiting for Mr. N to discover it. And when he did, Josh would be watching. Nick Allen and Mr. N were either identical or different, either the same person or not, and the answer to this binary question was coming soon. Chapter 3, Answer. Josh's trap wasn't working. Mr. N hadn't been anywhere near his desk all period, and ELA was nearly over. They had been learning about adverbs, which was only half the problem. The other half was Mr. N himself. He was trying to be funny today, and once he got started down that road, he was almost impossible to stop. Mr. N had been wandering around the room, but now he stood next to his green chalkboard near the windows, writing random words on it as he talked. Adverbs are useful, but they can also be dangerous. How dangerous? Seriously dangerous. Endlessly dangerous. Terrifyingly dangerous. And when does this adverb danger happen? It happens often. It happened yesterday. In fact, it's happening right now. And where does this danger happen? It happens here, there, and everywhere. It happens inside, outside, upstairs. Josh had to do something. Mr. N was sure to find that homemade Frindle pen today, but unless Josh was in the room to actually see him react to it, the trap was pointless, and he couldn't get an answer to his question. There just must be a way to... Faster than words, he had an idea. Mr. N didn't like interruptions, but Josh raised his hands anyway and waited and waited. Mr. N finally nodded at him, and Josh said, "Is there anything in the elements of style about adverbs?" Mr. N looked so happy about this question that Josh was afraid he might do a little dance, because if Mr. N got wound up enough, he would sometimes slide into dance moves. The school year was less than a month old, and he had already done this twice, and totally embarrassed everyone, except himself. Great question, Josh, and the answer is yes. In the last chapter of this book, E.B. White, remember that name, has all kinds of good advice about using adverbs. Actually, my favorite bit might be in Reminder 4, and I believe there's also something in Reminder 11. Then Mr. N hurried over and reached for the little book on his desk, and as he picked it up, Josh's fake Frindle pen dropped to the floor. The pen rolled a few feet toward the kids in the front row, but if Mr. N saw it, he ignored it. He flipped through his book and began reading the parts about adverbs. Josh didn't hear a word. He was trying not to look at the floor, and at the same time he was mentally yelling, "Pick up that pen! Pick it up now!" The silent shouting didn't work. When he finished reading, Mr. N glanced at the clock. "Well, I've managed to grind up 52 minutes into grammatically correct sausage. If I don't have your homework paper yet, please put it here on my desk before you leave." Vanessa Ames got out her assignment and stood up to turn it in. Then, as Josh watched, she reached down, picked up the runaway pen, and handed it to Mr. N. "This fell off your desk." Mr. N smiled and said, "Thanks." Josh saw Mr. N look at the pen, saw his eyes focus on that single word. The expression on Mr. N's face flashed from recognition to confusion, and then to something that looked almost like fear, a reaction that surprised Josh. And then just that quickly, it was as if nothing had happened. The look of fear vanished almost instantly, and Mr. N tucked the pen into the pocket of his shorts. But something had happened, and Josh thought he saw a sudden sharpness in Mr. N's eyes as he looked around the classroom. Josh turned away, trying not to grin. He kept his face blank as he put all his thought and energy into the small job of clearing his desk and loading his backpack. And as he dropped his homework assignment onto Mr. N's desk, Josh risked a glance at his teacher. That one look turned Josh from triumphant to troubled, because he realized that Mr. N knew something. In this second period class of 23 students, one kid had slipped that pen onto his desk. One kid knew about his connection with Frindle. And now, Mr. N was on the hunt. The bell rang, and Josh tried to seem loose and natural as he left the room and headed for math. He relaxed for real once he had turned the corner of the hallway, and he grinned as in his mind he shouted the answer to his binary question. Are Nick Allen and Mr. N the same person? Yes. Chapter 4. The Ghost of Frindle. Vanessa Ames caught up with Josh in the hall after class. So, am I the only one who saw Mr. N freak out back there? Josh nearly tripped over his feet. What are you talking about? About Mr. N's face. When I handed him that pen, he got spooked. I mean, he didn't cross his eyes or start barking, but for a half a second it was like he'd seen a ghost or something. A total nano-panic. Did you see it too? Josh realized he was not surprised that Vanessa had noticed Mr. N's face. She didn't miss much. Yeah, Josh said. I saw that same freeze up. She said, okay, so here's what I think. I saw something written on that pen I handed him. A word. Tremble or something. I don't know why, but maybe he had a reaction to it. Weird, huh? Well, now Josh was stuck. If he told Vanessa about the word on the pen, that was the key, and it might lead her into the whole secret. But if he didn't tell her now, and she learned about it later, then she'd know he held back. And holding back a secret like this from Vanessa? Not cool. He stopped her at the door of his math classroom before she could head to her social studies class. He looked both ways, then kept his voice low. I can't explain everything now, but if you get a second, Google the word Frindle, spelled F-R-I-N-D-L-E. Then go to the images and check out the first picture in the results. And we have to keep all of this totally between us, okay? Vanessa's eyes lit up. Oh, a mystery and a secret. I love it. My lips are sealed. See you at lunch. On the playground after lunch, Josh and Vanessa debate what they should do with this information. Should they talk with Mr. N and ask him why he's keeping this a secret? Should they tell other people? What should they do? They really haven't come up with any good answers, so they're going to think about it some more and talk with each other that night when they get home. Josh had no clue what their next move should be, or even if there should be a move at all, because doing nothing was also a possible move. More of a non-move, really, like a 0 in binary code instead of a 1. Josh kept wondering and worrying the rest of the afternoon, but all of that turned out to be unnecessary. The next move had already been made. Chapter 6, X, Y, and Z. When Josh was about halfway home on the bus after school, he got a text from Vanessa. Did you check out Mr. N's homework? He answered right back, no. Then Vanessa wrote, text me when you do, if you are not on the floor. It took Josh about 15 seconds to find the school's website on his phone and open the assignment. Homework due Wednesday. This is from Mr. N. Imagine that person X has discovered a secret about person Y. Nothing bad, but something that all of X's friends would find interesting. However, X has also learned that Y would rather not have his secret made public. In one or two of paragraphs, totaling no more than 150 words, explain what you think person X might do with his secret and why. Bring your final draft to class tomorrow, written in blue or black ink on lined paper. As usual, neatness counts. And don't forget about reminder 16 from Chapter 5 of the Elements of Style. Be clear. Mr. N. Josh didn't fall out of his seat on the bus, but he was having trouble catching his breath. Was Mr. N, also known as Person Y, using the assignment to figure out who had planted the Frindle? Or was he warning Person X to back off, not to reveal his secret? Or both? He replied to Vanessa's text to show he'd found it. He thought about using the scream face, but picked the surprised emoji instead. Right away, Vanessa sent a new text. Person X, you were right. Person Y would not have wanted to talk to us today, and Y would definitely be upset that you told someone, which means we have another big secret. Me! Then another text. Hey, can my code name be Z? Josh's mind was whirling. He couldn't think what to write back, so he sent emojis again. First a thumbs up, and then this time he went ahead and used the scream. When he got home 20 minutes later, Josh didn't get a snack, didn't open his favorite Python podcast, didn't watch YouTube, didn't do any of his usual after-school routines. Instead, he sat down at the kitchen table, opened his laptop, and tried something completely new. He pulled up his ELA homework first and reread the assignment. Explain what you think person X might do with this secret, and why. Josh stared at the screen for a long time thinking. And then he smiled and began to type. The next day in language arts class, there's a lively debate about what X should do with Y's secret. And through the discussion, Mr. N makes it perfectly clear that he would prefer that X keep Y's secret. And so that's what they decide to do. They're not going to tell anybody about Mr. N and that he was Nick Allen, the inventor of the Frindle. But Josh just can't put it down. He can't stop thinking about Nick Allen and the Frindle. I'm now in Chapter 8, Equation. How did Nick Allen come up with the word Frindle? And why make it mean pen? Why not key or shoe or book? And how come it's even a noun? Why not an adjective? It could mean loud, a Frindle motorcycle, or the Frindle explosion. Nah, that doesn't sound right. Adjectives have to sound like adjectives. An old Frindle, a shiny Frindle, a blue Frindle, that fancy Frindle. It's a weird made-up word, but Frindle sounds so real. Plus goofy and strange all at the same time. And when you say Frindle, it sounds kind of funny without trying to. Frindle is just so... With a jolt, Josh sat upright in math class and knocked his laptop onto the floor. Mrs. Fusaro stopped talking, her marker stuck in the middle of an equation on the whiteboard. She looked down at the laptop. Broken? Josh picked it up and touched the screen. To his relief, it flared to life. It's working fine. Sorry. Mrs. Fusaro went back to her equation, and Josh went back to his thoughts. But now he was thinking about Vanessa's question from earlier. You want us to gang up on Mr. N? What would we even be fighting for? It wasn't that Josh wanted to gang up on his teacher, but he did have something worth fighting for. In fact, he had the perfect end goal in mind. It was ambitious, and he couldn't just jump ahead. To achieve it, he had to start with something simple, something basic, just as he did with math and coding. Josh flicked open a note page on the laptop and tapped out a single line. Frindle equals pen. I wonder what his plan is. I wonder if he's getting ready for another battle, just like Nick Allen did in Frindle. What would be worth fighting for? What do you think Josh would want to fight for? I think I can think of something. Well, The Frindle Files by Andrew Clements takes the Frindle story into the 21st century and brings everything round full circle. A great novel by a very excellent author. The illustrations in Frindle and the Frindle Files are by Brian Selznick. They're lovely illustrations, and you might recognize Brian's name. He's written some wonderful books. One we had in the library that I could share with you today is Wonderstruck. It looks like look how thick that book is. But the story is told through illustrations. One of his more well-known books is The Invention of Hugo Cabret, which was turned into the movie Hugo. You might know that one. So Brian Selznick, his illustrations just add so much to the stories of Frindle and the Frindle Files. This has been Chapter Book Storytime. I hope to see you again next time. Thank you for joining me, and I hope your day is not too frindy.